Good evening and welcome to another edition of Down to the Wire. I'm your host, derbyologist, and joining me again this week is Capping with Candice. Candice here. This week, Candice, it's called Super Saturday, but before we dive into this week's races, I did want to quick get a recap of some of your thoughts on the City of Brotherly Love last week, both unbridled and then maybe Barren, or just talk about the Pennsylvania Derby in general.
As far as the ladies go, I was definitely impressed with Untappable. You know, the way the track was playing, there was definitely an inside speed bias, and her coming from off the pace and being wet all the way, that was nice. She did kind of lag in a little bit late, which is not what you want to see, but regardless, just considering how the track was playing, the fact that she beat that group as relatively easily as she did, I thought was impressive, especially considering I think it was JoJo Warrior that got second, pretty much rode the rail the whole way, so going against that on that kind of a track is tough, but she did what she needed to do, and to me she still is firmly on top of that class, and we'll see how she does against the older fillies and mares in the Breeders' Cup. I don't necessarily think that she's going to win that race, but she's definitely put herself on top of the 3-year-olds at this point in time. As far as the boys go over at Pennsylvania, I think it's fair enough to say California Chrome was a disappointment. I know neither you nor I picked him, but I certainly didn't expect it to be quite as bad of a performance as it was. I know people have made up a lot of excuses, but to me he just looked like a horse that was short of fitness and a horse who did not improve off of the layoff. So, if other people want to say, well, he was in tight and all this, he doesn't like being on the inside, I guess kind of say what you want, but it was pretty much a gold rail that day, so I don't really agree. I think it was a poor run from him. He was being shown the whip very early on before they hit the far turn, so definitely was short of fitness in there. I would expect him to improve there, but it's going to be a tall task if he's looking to win the Breeders' Cup off of that type of an effort. Bayern was, he does what he does, and I don't know how he got away with the 24-second first quarter, but it happens, and when you do that, you're not going to beat him. Speed bias track or not, I don't care if that race was there or if that race was at Saratoga. When you let him go that slow early on, you're not going to beat him. At 9 furlongs, you could have added 1-2 more furlongs onto that. He still was winning that race. So, I think Byron has cemented himself as, definitely a horse to look at in the Breeders' Cup Classic. It's going to be interesting because we don't really know how Anita's going to play now that they've resurfaced the track, but if it plays anything like it has in past years, the Breeders' Cup, you have to think that he's one you definitely have to consider.
This week we have kind of a Super Saturday format. We're going to start with the Joseph Hirsch turf race, and this one's got a small field and a couple of horses out of the Arlington Million kind of trying to bounce back here with a better effort.
I'm really excited by this race. I quite like this field. Like you said, it is small, but it really is kind of the big dogs of this division, I guess I would say. I mean, we have Imagining here, who he won Grade 1 earlier in the year over at Belmont. We have a couple Kittens, and Big Blue Kitten, who kind of had a late start this year, but definitely fits in this level. Real Solution really kind of struggled in the Arlington Million, but again, a Grade 1 winner. Main Sequence is on 2 in a row. And Metal Count, who everyone much anticipated debut on the turf. He got second by a Knowles. I think a lot of people thought he probably should have won that race, but he'll be on. He'll be interesting to see him second time on the turf now. For me, I think the horse I'm really looking at here is Real Solution. I know his Arlington Million was not at all what you'd be looking for, but I was there that day, and he clearly was not himself. He was very washed out, very lathered, and I've seen him a few times in person now, and I've never seen him look that bad before, so I'm just convinced that something wasn't right that day. Definitely before I'd play him, I would definitely have a look at him in the pulse parade and make sure we don't see some of the same, but he looks okay in the pulse parade. I fully expect him to bounce back here. That's not him. He's, if anything, the most consistent horse of this division, so Real Solution, I think, if he's right, is definitely a tough one in this kind of a spot. And we know Ramsey and his horses show up on big days, so it makes sense for him to, pull out a big performance here.
Some of my overall thoughts of the turf division on both sides is there has not been a dominating horse in either sex. I've been teasing all year long, and I think it's true with the filly division. Every one of these races so far, you could have ran them 7 times and had 7 different winners. And I think it's the same way with the boys. I'm really anti-main sequence here. I'm not a big fan at all when a horse wins by twice in a row by a neck. Like, that's just luck. Don't tell me you can plan to win by a neck and a head after running a mile and a half 2 times around. I do think at some point that pedigree is going to catch up with him. He's by Elder Baron, proven sprinter. I think his actually breaking slow both the last 2 races has helped him. And if he ever actually breaks well and runs closer to the pack, that's going to limit some of that stretch kick. Twilight Eclipse has ran really well for 3 straight races. I thought the last time he actually dug in pretty good, and he just had to keep on fighting Imagining off in that race. So I think he's due to kind of catch a little bit of a break. I didn't like Imagining the last time going a mile and a half, but I think he fits a little bit better at 10 furlongs. It was kind of interesting. For 3 weeks, they kept on mentioning the probables for this race, and Imagining was never listed, yet he kept on working out, and he's in there. So I don't know what that means, but I know Rosario's on him, and he's got a good string of workouts. So I don't know, not sure if nobody was contacting the trainer here or if they were thinking of going to another spot. I'm not sure.
One thing that's interesting about Imagining here is, and we kind of tend to see him in this kind of a position often, is that, there isn't a lot of speed here, and we tend to get that in these turf races. At least with this group, we've gotten it a lot. I'd expect him to be up on the lead. It might actually turn out to be a pace scenario that was similar to the Sword Dancer, with him up there, and Twilight Eclipse may be pretty close. So if Imagining can kind of lull him to sleep, like he did back at Belmont earlier in the year, well, then maybe he can run away with this one at decent odds. But this is an interesting race because, to me, I could see, nearly everyone in this field ending up in the Breeders' Cup Turf, which is obviously contested over the same distance as this race, which is a win and you're in. So it's going to be interesting. I do like Real Solution just because he's so consistent, and I'll be willing to put, draw a line to that last race just because I saw how he looked and it wasn't good. Maybe I'm most intrigued in seeing Big Blue Kitten. I actually much preferred him to Real Solution last year in both of their campaigns. They were kind of compared to each other fairly often, being that they're both kittens and they both ran in the same distance. I really preferred Big Blue Kitten back then. He had a late start to this year. I think he had a couple setbacks, but he's ran quite well, I thought, in both of his races thus far. He is better over this distance, so he will be stretching out, which I think obviously helps him out. So, he might be a really interesting one, 3rd time off the layoff in this kind of a spot.
Yeah, I think, Real Solution and Big Blue Kitten both offer a lot of the same qualities, and a lot of times, just their price. And then what I like here is, you were actually at Arlington for Arlington Million, and you saw something. You said that he didn't look right. So what you've got is hopefully an edge that you can't see in the past performances, but even if he doesn't fire, at least it's always good to have a little bit of information that you can't actually find in the PPs. I'm going to go with Twilight Eclipse. You could take any one of 4 or 5 horses. Imagining would be my second pick. I just think the pace may get kind of goofy or slow, and I just don't think any one of these horses is better than one another. So to me, to take the favorite in this race, main sequence, and I just think at too low of a price, that's not a good wager.
Yeah, I kind of agree that this race is really competitive, which is, for me, that's the only reason I wouldn't go with main sequence. I don't have as many issues with him as you seem to. But I just think this is a very competitive field, so just for value purposes, I'd steer clear of him. One thing I will note, though, is that prior to his most recent start, he had kind of a really weird work pattern. I don't know if he missed a work. I just remember when it was close to the Sword Dancer, I thought he wasn't even going to run because he looked like his work pattern was really off, and not only did he run, he ran in it, but he won the race. So that kind of did impress me a little bit, even if you don't like those short win by a neck performances. I'm going to go with Real Solution here. I think, coming off the last race, because he ran so poorly, you might actually get a decent price on him for once, which you don't get very often. And like I said, if he looks any better than he did last time, then I definitely expect an improvement. I'm going to take him over Imagining, just because there isn't that much speed here, and Imagining does well in those types of races. And then I'll put Big Blue Kitten third.
The Jockey Club Gold Cup, $1 million, East Coast, traditional East Coast classic type race. This race used to be run at 2 miles for a lot of years, and it was the end of the season before Breeders' Cup. The Jockey Club Gold Cup was your preeminent race. It was a 2-mile race on the calendar. Everybody geared up for it. You ran in the Brooklyn, and then you ran in the Woodward, and then you ran in the Whitney, and then they tested them at 2 miles, and whoever won that race was usually your horse of the year, and so a lot of big memories for some real old timers. Then they knocked it down to 1.5 miles, and it was ran for many years at that distance. Easy Goer, the final winner at 1.5 miles, and then just like everything else, they kind of said, oh my God, nobody can go 1.5 miles, and they made it a 10-furlong race. So it is what it is, but it shows you if you put 12, it's still a classic race because it got 12 horses. So the bottom line is it's still considered the most prestigious East Coast race.
Yeah, and we got a good field this time around, kind of everyone who you'd expect, maybe bar a couple, We'll Take Charge and Pals who are retired, unfortunately. This race to me is incredibly interesting, even more so because of the draw. We have two definite speedballs in here with Moreno and Big Casanova, and they are not only drawn both outside, they're drawn right next to each other. I couldn't be more pleased because I think this race is going to get nuts early on with those two side by side. I don't really know why Micromanage is in this race. He's drawn on the rail. He's really slow. I don't think that he's going to factor in here too much. And he is the one who probably does want, 1.5 miles, and instead he's here, which is a little bit puzzling. But for me, I'm looking at, a definite long shot here. I really, really like Stephanoatsee in this spot. This is a guy who, at least lately hasn't been running at this level, mostly in allowance races, always puts in kind of his competitive performance, always, closes late and ends up, finishing pretty close. But his last race in the Woodward was very, very nice. He was in last place the entire time. If you watch, I went to watch the replay of him, and he wasn't even on the screen most of the race. He was about 10 lengths back. Coming around the turn, he was 10 lengths back. And he was the only horse who was doing anything at the end of that race. But he really, closed nicely down the stretch there. He finished fifth, but it was only 3 lengths back. And considering how that race set up with It's My Lucky Day and Moreno, they were both on the front. I don't think they were going, ridiculously fast by any means. They both still finished 1-2, kind of went that way all the way around the track. And on Time Forward, they labeled that track as a very much speed favoring track. So for him to close like that, I thought was really nice. He stretches out here to 10 furlongs, which he's only ran once and was never really in it. But I think that he definitely wants further. He'll appreciate the 10 furlongs here. He has a couple quick works entering this race. And to me, he represents just huge value here. I know a lot of people like Zivo based off that performance in the Woodward too, but I think if that race is 10 feet further, Stephanoatsee beats Zivo there.
I want to start with the 2 speed horses on the outside. This is where I think sometimes people start counting their chickens, and I think people have been saying, oh, Moreno's a shoo-in for the Classic and all this type of stuff, and I'm just not, I think he's peaked, and I think he can only regress at 10 furlongs. The facts are the facts, and he's 3 for 21 lifetime. He's 0 for 3 at 1.25 miles. I think his Woodward, which was run on an extreme front-running biased track, he actually regressed from his Whitney, which was more impressive. So I think people, and then now you add in the 11 hole, and then you get a horse that has speed on the outside of him, Big Casanova, who I really do like a lot. I think people are underrating this horse. He's by Giants Causeway, 17 lifetime races, 6 seconds, 6 thirds. He's won 3 of his last 4. He's proven speed. He's not going to stop it. People just think this horse is like a mystery train, and we'll talk about him later on. But this horse isn't just going to stop 4 furlongs into the race. This guy is well meant. He was supplemented to the race. Good pedigree. back class. I think he's definitely in the mix. But I do think what you're going to, how that factors into the race is that rather than, and who knows how the track's going to play on Saturday, but rather than a, let's say, non-pushed pace, now you're going to have two horses at least getting a solid pace, which then totally changes up the running styles of Wicked, Strong, and Tonalist, which you're going to see two different performances from those horses.
Absolutely, and that's, for me, that's where you have to kind of decide what do you think is going to happen with Tonalist and Wicked Strong. I mean, we've mentioned on here how, you know, we think that Wicked Strong's best performances have come when he's been close to the pace. Yeah, he won the Wood Memorial from further back, but that was a little more ugly than some of, when he last won, and then he finished second last time out, and then over at the Remsen, like, those were the ones I'd consider his top three performances, and he was near the front in all three of those. So it's going to be interesting to see if he can lie back and kind of do what he did in the Wood Memorial, because that isn't how he's been running lately. Tonalist, they're taking those blasted blinkers off of him, thank goodness. So I expect him to be much further back. I would expect him to kind of go to more of the running style that he had when he broke his maiden, which is, kind of coming in the back. And he actually had a pretty nice turn of foot back then, and just with them running him so forwardly placed, it's kind of gone missing. So we'll see if, he can maybe, show a little bit more of himself with that kind of lay back and make one run tactic that he used to implement. But at the same time, I'm a little bit wary. While I want to see him with the blinkers off, I don't really know what to expect. I mean, I know he hasn't shown any signs of it, but he is a tap-it, so it could get crazy.
Couple of things about Tonalist. I was very adamant after that Travers that 23 1/4. People just don't understand when you do that going 10 furlongs. It, like well, look at Barron. I mean, he finished dead last and came back and won the Philadelphia Derby, and people are blaming it on this other stuff. I mean, the fractions, just when you run a 23 1 opening quarter, that's the difference between running 7 or 8 lengths at the end, going 10 furlongs. And if you really watch that race, remember Barron broke out of the gate by 2 lengths. Mm-hmm. And he set the 23 1. Meanwhile, Tonalist broke a couple of strides behind him. So I have Tonalist running that opening quarter in 22 3, which is just insane. And you're going to see the difference this time. The only reason I'm not picking Tonalist on top is because he's a 3-year-old facing older horses. I ended up going with Zivo. Zivo beat Marino back on the square in the Suburban, going 12 furlongs. He got a rail trip that day. I just think the paces get contested. I think Tonalist is very much in play. I mean, I think Zivo and Tonalist are the only two horses I'm really going to use. I do like Big Casanova because I think he's better than a lot of people think. I'm tossing Marino completely out of the top 4. In fact, I think this is one of those races where you'll see how really much I think he could run really bad, and then the people that think have been saying for 3 months that he's going to set the pace in the Breeders' Cup, he won't even be in the race. So I think Marino is one of those horses that, again, what people perceive the Breeders' Cup Classic to be is not what it's going to be. Wicked Strong is good. There's nothing wrong with him. B.E. Day, he's won 4 in a row. I think he's going to like the distance, so I guess he could win. I mean, I guess if I'm picking Zivo or Stephanoatsee, you could just as well pick V.E. Day. So really, it's probably just going to be who gets a better trip of the 3.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with that. The one thing that, I have against V.E. Day is going to be his price this time around. I definitely don't think there's going to be nearly the value there that there is for Zivo or for Stephanoatsee, and to be honest, I consider the 3 of them to be pretty even. I mean, especially Zivo and Stephanoatsee, there isn't much to slice between them, I think, especially considering the last performances. I slightly prefer Stephanoatsee for the reasons I discussed, and I'll have him on top. I will have Tonalist second, just because, like you said, 10 furlongs is up his alley. I do expect him to lay back and make one run. The blinkers, we'll see what kind of happens there, but, he's proven himself to be a classy individual, and regardless of, I think he definitely is capable of winning here, but, even if he doesn't, he's just always pretty consistent and always puts in an honest effort. You don't really see him kind of no-show in a race by any means. And, his price, I think, is going to be okay. I expect him to be around 4 or 5 to 1. That's pretty fair for him. So I'm going to do Stephanoatsee on top and Tonalist second.
quick mention Prayer for Relief. I think a lot of people are going to kind of bite on this horse a little bit. You know, he's closed those last 2 races, but I think it's a deceptive close. I think really he just kind of out-finished other horses, and it's a fine line. You're going to say, well, what's the difference between finishing and out-closing? Well, I think Zivo and Stephanoatsee are closers, and I think Prayer for Relief out-finished other horses. So the difference to me is that he was in a good spot. He was at the rail. He got first jump. He kind of made his move. But, you know, this horse is who he is. He's ran 33 times. He's 0 for his last 8. He's never won a Grade 2 or, I mean, he's not a Grade 1 horse. So I just think in a 12-horse field with honest Grade 1 horses, he kind of gets exposed. You know, I think he'll run 5th or 6th, but this is definitely not a horse that I'm going to go running to. I think he's going to be overbet, because all I remember the last time is like, oh, he's running into form, and this guy is sitting on a win, and I think it's the exact opposite. I think he's probably more likely to regress. He's had his chances this year. He's 0 for 8, and he just kind of plays to the competition. He's like your Vikings. You know, if they play a good team, they'll lose by 10, and if they play a bad team, they'll lose by 10. So in the end, it kind of just all evens out for Prayer for Relief.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely look at him as someone similar, that he's a little, I don't think he's necessarily closer, he's a little bit one-paced, and he'll just stay, so he ends up passing horses at the end that way.
All right, let's go out west. The Awesome again. Big day on Saturday at Santa Anita as well as Belmont, and 9 furlongs. Even though it's got a smaller purse, just $300,000, this is a Grade 1. Last year we saw Mucho Macho Man win this race with an outside post and won the Breeders' Cup Classic. This year, the current 2-to-1 favorite for the Classic, undefeated, 3-year-old Shared Belief, takes his undefeated mark into the race.
He does, and I think that he's going to get a nice pace setup once again, as he did in the Classic. We have Mystery Train back here, who dueled Game on doing it to the ground in the Classic, basically. He's back here. He's going to show speed. He doesn't know anything else. That's what he does. I don't know if FedBiz can keep up with him, but I expect him to be sent from the rail. He's plenty fast. He has won, you know, over 8.5 furlongs going wire to wire. So I would expect him to be up there at least somewhere. You can't really even though we don't really know totally how good Mystery Train is, you can't let him go. I mean, that would be stupid. So I do expect FedBiz to be up there, and if Shared Belief can just kind of settle behind those two, I think he's going to get the run of the race once again.
Yeah, I mean, I do want to talk about Mystery Train because, you know, I think people get too wrapped up in sometimes who these horses are trained by, and speed is deadly. It just is.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Mystery Train, you know, this guy has had an eventful year, you know. I was talking to Sig Mendoza, and I noticed that he ran 3rd by 26 lengths in a 4-horse field. Oh. Sig Mendoza was saying, oh, these 2 horses went tooth and nail, and they got themselves in a speed duel. And then right after that, he came back and ran 2 sub-45 fractions, sub-110 fractions. So, I mean, we knew going into that Pacific Classic that he was fast, and I think a lot of people thought I was joking when I said the train was going to mess up the dude, and he went out there, and so he could go either way. I mean, I just think that, I mean, Baffert already learned that lesson, so I don't think he's going to send FedBiz. On the other hand, you know, he won 2 Grade 1 races over in Argentina, and he did it in a sub-159. I mean, nobody in America can touch that. I mean, so if they just let this guy get a 5-length lead, I wouldn't be surprised if he won the race. I mean, am I going to pick him? No, but I think people will be shocked if he wins. And to me, it's not about the better horse. There's just different scenarios that could unfold. And you give this guy a 3-length lead, and I think he could win.
No, I completely agree on that analysis as far as you can't let him go. He's too fast to let him go. And again, this is a tricky race because they kind of breed on the track at Santa Anita a little bit, and we haven't gotten a chance to see it yet. So we don't really know, you know, how the track's going to be playing this weekend. If it's favoring speed, goodbye. Just go put your money on Mystery Train then. Forget about everybody else. But I mean, I do think Shared Belief is class of this field. So for me, it's going to be a race that just betting wise, I'm going to kind of stay away from. I expect it to be, regardless of how the truck's playing, I expect this race to be pretty strong out, though. I mean, there's just, aside from Mystery Train, and then to a lesser extent FedBiz, and then Shared Belief kind of has some nice tactical speed, no one else in here on this race has really any speed at all. So I kind of expect whoever wins this race could easily do it by a very wide margin, and actually this race could get kind of ugly late.
That's kind of how I see the race. I mean, I really see Mystery Train on the lead, and depending what FedBiz does is the key to the race. I think FedBiz, if Mystery Train wasn't in this race, I think FedBiz would have a big shot. His race off the layoff with a big win. That race against Golden Sense, nobody was going to beat Golden Sense that day. So that's a solid second. He's hinted at grade 2 ability in the past. As a 3-year-old in February and March of his 3-year-old year, this guy was talked about as being on the Derby Trail. The pedigree is there. He's a nice horse. He's a well-bred horse. So FedBiz is a quality grade 2 horse. Mystery Train is a mystery. Shared Belief he is all of that in a bag of peanuts. I mean, he's undefeated. He really is untested. He's been mature since day one. I still go back to that cash call when 2-3 horses went right on by him on the backstretch, and any other 2-year-old would have just freaked out and immediately put down the hammer and ran themselves into the ground, and he just waited and waited, and he won the race easily. Then he, even off the layoff at Golden Gate, I mean, it's not so much that he won that race, like he just won it in hand. Like you could just, some horses just look classy. At Lost Sale, I mean, Candy Boy got even with him, and he just dusted him, and I mean, that's still impressive to just dust. I mean, he puts away horses. Like, Main Sequence and all these other horses keep on winning by a neck, and B.E. Day. This guy doesn't, it's not close. I mean, whether he's had bad paces, fast paces, whatever, like he just wins every time by 4 lengths. Like, that is unusual. And that's usually a sign of pretty untouched ability. Now, on the other hand, he does have bad feet. That is the truth. He does have bad feet. They did not purposely rest this horse for 4 months just for the fun of it. He is a small horse. He weighs less than 800 pounds. His knees are crooked. He is not going to have a long career. He is not going to run 50 races. People might as well forget about that. So at any given time, bad feet, bad legs, and getting bumped around by some big older horses could jostle him around a little bit. So, I mean, to me, it's a non-betting race. I'm picking Shared Belief. If I had to pick one other horse, if he were to scratch for some reason, I'd say FedBiz would almost be a playable at even money. Mystery Train, I'm just saying, what's the old saying, that anything that you rule out as not impossible is possible? And to me, if you said Mystery Train had a 3-length lead and the fractions were 110 and 2, and you told me he won the race, I would believe that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I kind of look the same way. I'm not going to bet it. I'm just going to watch it. I expect Shared Belief to win, but yeah, if you told me that FedBiz or Mystery Train won, it wouldn't completely shock me. One thing to also say, because it seems like people kind of let Shared Belief off the hook when he won at Los Al, being that that was on the dirt, and his other wins have come over synthetic surfaces, but remember that Los Al is a very, very quirky track, and it was very front-running, and he just kind of ran really, really close to the front, was kind of pressing Cam the Man. So I wouldn't let him completely off the hook, saying that he's 100%, cleared, good to go on a dirt track, because Los Al is a little bit of a quirky track in of itself. So, a win here at Santa Anita would make me feel a lot better about his ability on dirt.
Well, and that's where the Breeders' Cup Classic is. So it would, there's, he really has, it's a big race for him. And, I think he's going to win. But, if he doesn't win, I would say it's more something up with his feet and legs than these other horses being better than him.
Yeah.
The Oklahoma Derby, the Prides of Oklahoma, Remington Park on Sunday. You're going to be there live. And, this is one of those races. They have, Remington has, Oklahoma's horse country. So Remington has a lot of full fields, a lot of good Oklahoma breds, solid purse levels. They have slots. So really over the last 10, 12 years, they have a good solid meet. This race, they kind of have their own traditions. They have a nice, good, full card. It's run on a Sunday. They always play, they have somebody sing Oklahoma. during the post parade. I assume that'll be you this year. So I'm looking forward to the race. But what we're hearing, they haven't drawn the entries yet. 13 horses, and if I remember right, 2 years ago they had 14 horses in this race. So traditionally, they love to run in the Oklahoma Derby.
Yeah, and the horses that we're kind of seeing who might potentially go there, it's a solid group. This isn't, a grade 1 by any means, but the fact they got Wildcat Red, that's nice. I mean, he's obviously has run in top company this year and en route to the Kentucky Derby, so, I'm glad that they got a horse as solid as him. We get plenty of horses who were unfortunately trounced by Vickers and Trouble last time out. We get Jessica Starr, we get Louise Flower, Charge Now. So I think a lot of, solid, listed group in grade 3 horses in this kind of a crew that'll be showing up. We might get Rebranded, who's kind of impressed out here my way in Colorado. He used to be with Fletcher, so it's going to be an interesting race. I mean, I fully would expect Wildcat Red to win it, especially considering that so many of these were beaten by Vickers and Trouble, who has a pretty similar running style to Wildcat Red, although Wildcat Red, I think, is faster. So I'd expect him to win, but, big fields are always fun. And, actually there's quite a few stakes races that day on Sunday afternoon. And, for me personally, I'm hoping we see my boy Haytai in the sprint in the undercard.
Yeah, Wildcat Red kind of committed to this race a few weeks ago. And again, I'm a big believer in make a plan and plan your work. And, we've seen throughout the year, he kind of got tossed into the last race after, which, as it turns out again, that effort against Bayern in the Haskell was a solid effort. And then his prep for the Haskell was a huge effort. He beat East Hall in that race. So I'm picking and expecting Wildcat Red to win. I kind of actually am rooting and hoping that he does win, because I think it'll kind of confirm a little bit more of that Bayern form. And I think Wildcat Red can make a lot of money as a 4-year-old running in these 9 furlong, 8.5 furlong races. I think he's more than a sprinter, and I'm kind of just hoping that he does win this race so that they don't just reduce him to just a 7 furlonger, and we only see him maybe 4 or 5 times next year. I think he still has some latent talent that maybe could win some 8.5, 9 furlong races.
Yeah, you and I talked about him a few weeks ago, and we both kind of agreed that his run in the King's Bishop just really struck us as that it was an afterthought, that he was absolutely pointed for the Haskell, in which I thought he was clearly the second best. He stumbled out of the gate, rushed up to the lead, and was restrained in rank, and still came home third there. Nobody was beating Bayern that day, but I think that was a solid effort in a spot where he absolutely was well meant. The King's Bishop, I think, was a rash decision, and an afterthought. They threw him in there. He didn't do anything. But like you said, now this has been a plan. They have said, several weeks out that he was going to be coming here. So I expect him to, once again, be well meant. I like him back on the stretch out. And you just can't deny that his last 2 races, it's not saying he would have won either of them. But for him, as a front runner, as a horse who, absolutely his weapon in these races is his start from the break. He is fantastic out of the gate. In his first 3 strides, he can get ahead of a field probably nobody else except for Bayern. So the fact that he stumbled at the start of both those races, really, it does a front runner in more than a back marker in races. So, for a horse like him, or we talk about Obviously, or Bayern, or Game on Dude, or any of these front runners, when they stumble at the gate, you can pretty much say that their race is all but over unless they put in, a humongous effort. So he wouldn't have won either race, but it is definitely noteworthy to him that he stumbled at the break of both those starts. And hopefully he'll break better here. It's a little weird because that's always been his strength, so I don't know what's happened these last 2 times out for him.
Should be an exciting edition. You'll be, of course, live, so if people want to get updates. When you mentioned you were able to tweet out on Million Day, you didn't like the looks of Real Solutions. So if you want some inside tips, follow Candice on Sunday. She'll tweet out some paddock thoughts on that race and a few other races. Super Saturday is this week, and of course next week we come right back at it. We got the Fall Star Weekend at Keeneland, and then a couple of big races at Santa Anita again. So it's starting to get real here, as they say, and we're only 4 or 5 weeks away now from the Breeders' Cup. That's going to do it for another edition of Down to the Wire.